People will do a lot to get rich quick.
Games. Rich? Quick?
Playing the stock market, investing in crypto, getting tricked into a pyramid scheme, murdering innocent people. Hold up, what? Turns out, the Palestinian Authority offers desperate people a horrible way to make a quick buck. All you have to do is attack some Israelis, and you and your family are set for life. The PA calls this program a martyrs fund. The rest of the world knows it as pay to slay. So how does this program work? And why hasn't anyone stopped it yet? I don't know about you, but when I think about the purpose of a government, I imagine things like maintaining law and order, developing the economy, building infrastructure, giving citizens something to complain about. Well, the Palestinian Authority definitely gives Israelis and Palestinians lots of things to complain about. Like the fact that they openly fund murder.
في شغلة بدأ إنه الأمريكان بيقولوا لنا عليها إنه إحنا بنوقفها وهي رواتب الشهداء وأسر طبعا إحنا نرفض هذا رفضا قاطعا.
But this story starts before the PA even existed, all the way back to the 1960s. Israel's borders have always been, shall we say, flimsy. From the very first day as a state, Arab infiltrators have been sneaking in for a variety of reasons. Some were trying to get back to the fields they had once worked before 1948. Some were there to steal, desperate to feed their families. But others crossed the border for more sinister reasons, like murder. But sneaking into a foreign country is a risky proposition, especially when you're technically at war. Fun fact, even though the War of Independence ended in 1949, Israel's neighbors didn't recognize its right to exist and even maintained declarations of war for decades. Okay, maybe not such a fun fact. When you go behind enemy lines, there's no guarantee you'll come back. And that leaves your family, which is already most likely living in poverty, without a breadwinner. So when the PLO formed in 1964, they came up with a creative solution. They didn't want to stop their people from infiltrating into Israel. Israel was the enemy. The more infiltrations, the better.
We think that the only way is to carry our arms and to fight. And this is what we are doing.
But they needed a way to incentivize infiltrators. So they created a twisted version of Social Security. Anyone who crossed into Israel to do some damage could rely on generous payments from the PLO. That way, the families wouldn't be left destitute if their primary earner got caught, killed, or injured.
The PLO, the IRA, and the hot dog stand behind the warehouse. Name 3 businesses that have better healthcare plans than Dunder Mifflin.
Now, the PLO may have styled itself as the official representative of the Palestinian people, but it wasn't exactly a government. In fact, Israel viewed it as a terrorist organization for the first 3 decades of its existence. The Palestinian people didn't really have a government until the Oslo peace agreements, which were meant to set up the infrastructure needed to build a future Palestinian state. That meant they needed a government. That's how the Palestinian Authority, or PA, was born. Governments, even transitional governments like the PA, need money to function. Turns out that even basic governance is expensive. So countries from all over the world started donating hundreds of millions of dollars each year to the PA. Even Israel agreed to collect and set aside tax revenue on their behalf. The PA was supposed to do all the boring stuff that governments are supposed to take care of. Maintaining security to stop attacks on Israel, maintaining basic law and order, and taking care of bureaucratic stuff like issuing business licenses and setting up a social safety net. This is all stuff that most people in functioning countries kind of take for granted. And the PA did do some of that. But they took the social safety net in an unusual direction. They set aside a portion of their budget to continue the program that the PLO had started. Sneaking into Israel for nefarious purposes but worried about your family's income? Don't worry, the PA would take care of you. It was like a messed up version of workers' comp, with one crucial difference. Workers' comp pays people who get injured doing normal jobs, like construction. The PA's so-called Martyrs Fund pays people who are killed or imprisoned for terrorism, or as they call it, the resistance against the occupation.
ولكن كل الخيارات مفتوحة لكل أشكال المقاومة على الأراضي المحتلة.
That's right. A transitional government, which was established as part of a peace agreement, was openly paying its citizens to kill Israelis.
This is nonsense.
In fact, a top PA official boasted that the so-called Martyrs Fund had paid out roughly $4.5 million annually between 1995 and 2002. In other words, as the PA was negotiating with Israel, it was paying its own people to kill Israelis. But negotiations broke down entirely in late 2000. Shortly afterwards, the Second Intifada started. Between 2002 and 2004, the PA handed out $25 million a year to the suicide bombers and gunmen who attacked Israelis in markets, movie theaters, and cafes. For the math nerds watching, that's an increase of over 500%. And the PA is still paying out terrorists for their role in the Second Intifada. The guy who designed the bomb that killed 15 people in 2002 is still getting his monthly check. So is the bomber's family. In fact, these payments are guaranteed through PA law. The Prisoners and Released Prisoners Law is a long and boring name for a program that legally guarantees a payout for terrorists. But the text of the law, which was expanded in 2013, is anything but boring. Its stipulations are frankly bonkers. In jail for 6 months, you'll get a little something each month. In jail for a year, on top of your monthly salary and twice annual clothing allowance, you're looking at free or subsidized tuition and health insurance, plus a little bonus for when you get released. Those are better benefits than some American jobs. In jail for 10 years, congrats, you're now officially guaranteed a job in the government. Hey, Palestinian Authority? Pro tip, your government might run a little better if you hire people based on qualifications rather than a body count.
Just a thought.
If this sounds insane, well, that's because it is. How is the PA allowed to get away with blatantly funding terrorism? Well, Israel has tried its best to disincentivize terrorists. It demolishes their houses, sets up restrictions on who can enter the country, and builds checkpoints and security fences to keep potential terrorists out. All of these moves are considered controversial, particularly the demolition of houses. Critics say that this unfairly punishes the terrorist's family, who didn't commit any crimes. But advocates of the policy say, yeah, duh, that's the point of deterrence. Thing is, this kind of deterrence doesn't really work if you're guaranteed the funds to just build a new house. If you want to cut off terrorism, you gotta follow the money. And it wasn't until 2018 that Western countries began cutting off aid to the PA. See, in the spring of 2016, a young Palestinian from the West Bank went on a stabbing spree that injured 11 civilians and killed 1. That civilian was an American veteran named Taylor Force. He wasn't Jewish. He wasn't Israeli. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It is with profound sadness that we gather today and bow our heads in fellowship as Taylor Force begins his journey home.
2 years later, the US passed the Taylor Force Act, which froze all financial aid to the PA until they pulled the plug on pay to slay.
So what the Taylor Force Act will do is give the Palestinian Authority a clear choice. You can either stop doing what you're doing, or you won't have our money, at least, to do it with.
Other nations quickly followed suit, passing laws that froze or restricted aid to the PA. With other countries in its corner, Israel passed its own freezing law. Since 2018, Israel has withheld hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue from the PA each year. Now, I want to be clear about exactly what this means. These freezing policies do not apply to humanitarian aid. Vaccines, medical supplies, and other basic necessities aren't affected. Plus, Israel isn't taking the PA's tax revenue for itself. It's just setting aside the funds for a day that the PA agrees to officially end pay to slay. So, are these policies working? Unfortunately, no. You can accuse the PA of a lot of things, but a lack of creativity isn't one of them. They've done a very good job of exploiting loopholes to their advantage. They've designated their pay-to-slay funds as welfare payments.
By the occupying power or its deceitful distortions of social welfare to families of prisoners and martyrs.
They've established their own financial institutions free from international regulations.
بأنه في بنك راح يكون
البنك الوطني بنك الاستقلال هذا للكل لكن بالشكل خاص للأسرى لأنه هذا البنك بيخضعش للابتزاز زي البنوك الثانية.
They've straight up lied about where the money goes.
I don't want anybody to misunderstand us. All what we do is we are here to help people. Orphan, kids, families, and so on. We are giving people assistance. We are not encouraging people to kill more Israelis.
So despite the Taylor Force Act, the US resumed paying the PA in 2021, spending $500 million to aid the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Now, this money isn't all supposed to go to the PA. Lots of it goes to UNRWA and US aid programs. But it would be naive to assume that some of this money doesn't trickle into the PA's bank accounts.
In the PA's 2018 budget, Abbas has allocated $355 million toward the pay-to-slay policy. That's 7% of the total PA budget. 7%. Imagine all that money spent to encourage the killing of Jews.
And though Palestinians hate the PA, they love the payments. A whopping 91% approve of the pay-to-slay program. President Mahmoud Abbas, who is almost universally hated among Palestinians, has no incentive to stop the payments. They're one of the only shreds of leverage he has left. Considering that 60% of Palestinians are calling for the dissolution of the PA, Abbas is going to cling to whatever he can to keep himself in power. Because ultimately, Palestinian governments have never really cared about their people. If they did, they'd spend their billions in aid money on, aiding Palestinians. But it's a lot more fun to use donor money to line your own pockets. And it's a lot easier to exploit young men and women to attack Israelis than to actually do the hard work of governing.
الآن طلبوا من البنوك أن لا تدفع للأسرى، راح ندفع للأسرى غصبا عن أبوه.
The PA has proven that it can funnel its resources towards social welfare. Unfortunately, in order to really benefit, you have to kill an Israeli or two first. And if you really believe that your fight is a righteous one, being killed or imprisoned is almost a badge of honor. Because to most Palestinians, killing an Israeli civilian isn't an act of terrorism, it's an act of resistance. One that 75% of Palestinians in both the West Bank and Gaza support. And that is a lot more dangerous than the pay-to-slay program. Governments can be toppled. Regimes can change. Aid can be cut off. But convincing an entire people that their neighbor isn't going anywhere, that peace is preferable to war, that's a lot more difficult. Until the majority of Palestinians accept that Israel is here to stay, they will keep pursuing its destruction. Which means Israel will keep fighting back. The cycle won't stop until Palestinians and Israelis actively choose to stop it. And if the PA's programs, not to mention its rhetoric, are any indication, we have a long way to go before that happens.